South Africa's society was made, in fact, this is the point, was made violent by a racist regime, and it is continuing to be in those conditions.
The EFF's Mobisiani Ndlozi, during an interview on the show, justifying being violent in Parliament in response to racism. And let me come to you, and I'm going to ask you a question afterwards, Brad. I'm not ignoring you. But, you know, when you hear those sort of comments coming from people who should be setting the moral high ground, and we're seeing it from both sides, aren't we? Where does it leave the reconciliation process?
No, I think it's far better for rage to be expressed in appropriate forums and to be understood. And I know my experience has been that the rage of black people is legitimate rage, and it needs to be validated. So we started a process called the ticking time bomb, racism, and it was largely young graduates who have experiences as like auditors tramping through these buildings in Joburg and only ever seeing a woman making tea and nobody else, and feeling intense rage that still so many years later this is the reality in the corporate world largely. And I mean, the big thing is like that is legitimate rage, and the response is not to retaliate with more rage. It's to be able to hold and recognize the pain that triggers that rage. That's our understanding.
You experienced the most extraordinary rage in one of our darkest periods in history. Tell us what happened and the impact on you and those survivors who've never had.
Do you mind if I just answer, just jump in here? You know, the problem that I feel that we have in this country is we have the radical left, the EFF, and, you know, the AfriForum types, etc., that stir up problems, and because that's what keeps them popular. And, you know, it's the same old rhetoric. The National Party did it many, many years ago.
But it's dangerous, isn't it?
It's very dangerous, and it's very reckless and very irresponsible.
So why can't we stop it?
If they can just leave us alone in the middle so that we can just get on, and, you know, so that we can heal, so that we can look each other in the eye and not look down at each other, but look at each other in the eye as an equal and learn about that person. When you go into a store, you know, make contact. You know, don't just look down on the ground and walk around. You know, make an effort. You might learn something. So to me, that's very important, because it can lead to empathy, and it can potentially lead to love as well, which is such a powerful
Is it easier, though, and I want to get back to what happened to you, but is it easier to hear those loud voices for people who haven't been able to deal with anger? Is that the...
I think we should be very careful about left and right, because it's such a relative thing. The responsibility is on each and every one of us as leaders of this country to have those conversations.
To take it down.
That Marjorie is talking about. Because you'll be amazed, even in AfriForum or in EFF, if people sit and have conversations, because rage, justifiable to understand as it is a destructive force. Whereas if one gives those who are enraged the space to express their pain, their anger, and to then come to terms with someone acknowledging, I hear your pain. Then we can get closer to the healing. And so I really think we should avoid giving space by labeling things. We are all South Africans. We all are responsible, co-responsible for healing this land. And I tell you, Jane, it works. As Marjorie says, when you do give yourself that space, it's incredibly
I remember, so when I lived here for a couple of years in 2000, there was this feeling of euphoria. And what really struck me was how much people liked each other. I think there was a shock about how much people liked each other. But obviously things have, you know, regressed since then. I've got a call on the line, Thabo from Pretoria East. Go ahead, Thabo.
Hi, how are you guys? Let me just pose a question as soon as possible. We know what white people have done in this country. They have engineered our townships. They have engineered our inferior education. They have killed our people, even including our leaders. But having done that, we've forgiven them. What have white people done to repair the legacy of apartheid? One thing that they've done. One. I'm asking your panel.
Okay, who'd like to answer that? That's a good question.
I think that's a legitimate question.
Yeah.
But we must remember, we, black people and the majority of South Africans, we are in charge. What white people have failed to do, we have to take responsibility for building the country that we dreamt of, that people died fighting for, which is in the preamble of our Constitution, on the foundations of this African wisdom of Ubuntu. The thing is, we cannot lower our expectations to the behavior of white people. We have to raise the standards, the norms, the ethics to the standards of Ubuntu, of our constitutional dispensation. And that way, we should have by now, after 25 years, re-engineered those townships. We should have re-engineered that education. We should have re-engineered our healthcare system. So I think we need to take some responsibility. Yes, it will be a great day when all South Africans link hands and we actually forget about this less than 1% that we call white and black, and just link hands as
because it's like an obsession at the moment, isn't it?
It is a correct obsession because we haven't healed the problem.
So what needs to be done? I mean, okay, so obviously it was cut short, the healing. What can be done now to expedite the process?
Jane, we need to give more opportunities for the people whose truth has not yet been heard to be heard. We think we need, especially in the former homelands where they were barely touched by the Truth Commission, so truth-telling and memorialization, processes of memorialization help people to lay the ghosts to rest. We're involved with what we call Ngozi ceremonies.
Can I interrupt you there, because there's a caller on the line who does want to speak to you. Lerato, go ahead. Hello, Lerato. I believe you've got a question for Marjorie.
Yes, I've got a question for Marjorie. Marjorie, my grandmother was one of the victims, well, should I say, one of the people that were in the program for Khulumani. It's been 24 years now. Whilst it was a very good initiative, gave great support, but I feel like it never went anywhere. And she's now 93. I just wanted to know, how would I go about taking it forward? Because even on her deathbed today, she's still talking about the injustices and nothing was done about it. So to honor her wishes, how do I go about, following through?
Lerato, thank you for that. Do you know that it's taken until this year to finally get the Department of Justice to acknowledge that they have never had a comprehensive policy for repairing the damage of the past. So now we are in a process with the officials in the Justice Department to construct the policy that we could have crafted 23 years ago, because you cannot heal these wounds without concrete material remedies. And I mean, we've been talking as if we're talking to a toy telephone, on and on and on, presenting in Parliament, trying to make people listen. Now the Minister has declared that everything the TRC unit did has been useless, and we now have to work together to put a policy and make the things work that people need. When you're 92, there's still a lot that you can do.
Exactly.
People,
you've
we can learn from those people.
And you've written a book, and I know that what sort of struck you were the people have never received knowledge that can conclude this. As they need. They need
closure.
They need closure.
So that's correct. So, what has struck us so much is the fact that on the 15th of November, marked the 30th year anniversary of the Strijdom Square massacre. In all these years, you know, these people haven't been acknowledged. They haven't been memorialized. Nothing like that has happened. And so, yes, correct. This event that I witnessed profoundly changed my life, and it sent me on an astounding journey. And but there's been something just gnawing at me my whole life, and that's the fact that I couldn't find out who Kind Eyes was, the young black man that got shot and that was lying in my lap when I was 17. And I wanted
Bradley,
to know who he's...
I have to do something awful. I've got to, in the middle of this story, we've run out of time.
No.
But thank you for sharing with us. And if anyone wants to know more about that story and what happened 30 years ago and your work, they can get in touch with you or they can find out what you're doing online. But I think, you know, the message is to get something done now. Can't wait any longer. Bradley Steyn, Mamphela, Marjorie Jobson, thank you.
Thank you.